Full name is Harry Minuim, last name Minuim. Right now, I'm a senior executive writer at Old Dominion University. In 1982, I covered high school sports for the Virginian Pilot, and I worked at the Pilot for 39 years. It was such an amazing story that I think people in Virginia Beach and Chesapeake and people all around Norfolk kind of rallied around this team because it was an incredible story. I've never covered a team with more heart than that team. I mean, I believe they started 1-2. I 1-1, and I believe then Al Hatchett then passed away, and they lost their next game. And to win all the rest of the regular season, win the Eastern District title, it was just amazing. It was a group of working class kids. They weren't very big. Some of them weren't very talented. Like 7 or 8 of them started both ways. It was just amazing to see them play as well as they did, and especially with all the heart they played with. I can't imagine being 17 or 18 years old and losing a teammate and playing as hard and as well as they did. It's the most amazing thing I've seen in my 40 something years as a journalist. After they won a couple of games, after Al Hatchett passed, they won a couple of games, and you could see, Fonzo Wiggins, he was a great running back, and you could see the offensive line was opening some holes for them. They were gaining their confidence, and you could also see that they were a team on a mission. They were playing for Al Hatchett, and a couple of 2 or 3 games, 2 or 3 victories down the road, I realized this is a team that could do great things. Now, a lot of people didn't agree with me. A lot of people thought that, this is, they're not that good. They're not going to do well. And then they went into the playoffs and they did really well. So I'm pretty sure that game was played at Princess Anne High School, and the place was packed. And it
Mm.
was, and I don't think anyone there thought Lake Taylor had a chance, except me and a few of their fans and the players on the sidelines. It was, you're not supposed to root when you're a sports writer, but man, it felt good. They just ran all over First Colonial. First Colonial, coached by Frank Webster, they were a great program back then. And that's when I think people in the region finally figured out this is really a good team. And I'll never forget that game and the feeling. It's a long time ago, but I'll never forget the feeling I had in that game. I don't remember the specifics of that week. Quite honestly, it's been 40 years. I do remember him as a guy who was just relentless. He had a tremendous work ethic, and every play for him was a challenge. He didn't sit out a play. He ran all of his routes very hard. He blocked hard. He was just like most of his teammates. He was just a hard-nosed player, and he had some talent. Um, like I said, I don't remember that particular week because I'm getting old, but
Yeah.
I thought they were going to win. No one else thought so. I just, beating Mike Smith and his team, I believe that was played at Todd Field and Newport News, and there were all Hampton fans there. There weren't a lot of Lake Taylor fans. Like you said, Hampton had not lost to a Southside team in more than a decade. I think maybe had been longer. Um, it was incredible. They won 17-14. I remember the score, and I remember Mike Smith, who's a good guy and who I've gotten to know since, coming out on the field, and the Lake Taylor coach is shaking his hand, and he's just in shock. He can't
Mm.
believe he lost to these guys from Norfolk. And I remember his wife coming out on the field, who I've since gotten to know, just crying her eyes out. It was from that point on, people believed in Lake Taylor, because if you beat Hampton,
Mhm.
that to me may have been their best victory this season, beating him. Yeah, that's right. I'd forgotten they beat FC at Met Park and then at Princess Anne. I was speaking of the championship game. Yeah, I remember the game at Met Park. The regional game. I think it was after beating Hampton, people had a lot of respect for Lake Taylor. I still think people expected FC to win, and because their program at that time was just year after year after year, they would do well in the playoffs. They would win the beach title and do well in the playoffs. But I don't remember the score, but Lake Taylor won the game fairly handily, I do believe. Yeah. And that sounds right. And I mean, think of that. Their defense shutting down First Colonial's, running game. Um, I believe they ran the option back then. And you got 8 guys playing both ways. They're playing offense and defense at Lake Taylor. And for them, the whole First Colonial was 7 points. I remember how quiet the crowd was. As all these FC fans came to Princess Anne to see their team win. And the one thing I remember most of all is how the dignity of the Lake Taylor players as they won. There wasn't a lot of grandstanding or celebrating. They just did their business. They just won. And then at the end of the game, they shook the hands of the other team. And I think everyone respected all the Lake Taylor players. I came to the Virginian Pilot from the Richmond News Leader, so I knew a little bit about Richmond area football. And quite frankly, I did not think Dinwiddie would win that game simply because they don't play the kind of football in Richmond that we play here. I think that game was 14-10. It was closer than I thought it would be, but that was Dinwiddie there. That high school was out in the middle of nowhere. It was a very small stadium out in the middle of nowhere. Yeah, I was not surprised to see them win that game. I thought they would keep it close, but they would lose, and that did not happen. Of course, they wound up getting crunched pretty good. From what I remember, I actually flew to that game. We had it's the first and only time I've ever been in Danville, and we took a little private plane because we wanted to get back to Norfolk in time to get the pictures and everything done. So the only way to do that back in 1982, pre-internet and all that, was to actually fly out there. And I talked to some Lake Taylor fans and players after the game, and they said there was a lot of noise around the hotel. GW had ardent fans, and they made a lot of noise to keep the Lake Taylor players up. And there were 9 or 10,000 people that game. It was a first-class stadium, and that was a huge team. They were just really talented. They were the best team in the state that year. But it's amazing. Just think about it. A team that was 1-2 and had lost, a guy who was sort of the heartbeat of the team to a terrible accident, and they got to the state championship game. I mean, that's just an amazing feat. Like I said, I've covered a lot of great teams over the year. The Virginia Tech team that almost won the national championship in 1999. A lot of Old Dominion basketball teams that are really being good. I've never covered a team the heart of that 1982 Lake Taylor team. I've never had a more favorite team than that one. I just love those guys. I think one of the things they did is they helped bring Norfolk together. And we live in racially divided times now. Just think about how bad, it was much more divided 40 years ago. And how could you not love these kids? How could you not love them with what they were doing? It's just amazing what they did. And I think a lot of people wouldn't necessarily rally around an inner city football team. Really thought a lot of these kids, and they deserved it. They were just, they weren't just, they were good football players. Most of them weren't great. They were all good human beings. And most of them have, from what I understand, have grown up to be good parents, good fathers, good people. And wish I could go back and relive that. It was such a fun time. I feel so privileged. Hey, Titans, if you guys ever have a reunion, you better invite me.
I guarantee they probably will.
I would love to see some, and I'm sure, I'm getting near my 50th high school reunion, and my former classmates are dropping like flies. So I'm sure some of them have passed away, but I'd love to see the kids who haven't. I'd love to see how they've done in life. I'd love to just see them one more time. They were such a great group of kids.
Yeah.